Hi guys, and welcome to the podcast. I am, of course, your host and podcast founder, Lawrence Francis. I just want to take this opportunity to give you a quick overview of this series, which features coverage of the Dublin Wine and Cheese Festival, which took place at Iveagh Gardens in central Dublin between the 8th and the 11th of August 2019, which will air on the Interpreting Wine podcast between episodes 289 and episode 300. This will feature a mixture of talks and one-to-one interviews with some of the leading lights in the Irish and international wine scene. This consumer fair is now in its second year, and I was seriously impressed with the quality of speaker overall. I think that events of this type really lend themselves well to being covered for the podcast, and would love to feature more events of this kind in the future. So without further ado, here is today's episode of the Dublin Wine and Cheese Festival 2019 series. Today's episode of the podcast features Beverley Mathews of Latitude 51 in her talk, We Want Loire. With the help of Pascal Rossignol, who of course appeared last time, we get a deep dive into the wines of the Loire and see how these turn up in the glass with a tasting of 4 wines. Enjoy.
Welcome to We Want Loire. I'm Beverley Mathews. I'm the owner of Latitude 51 Wine Bar in Cork City, and I've invited Pascal Rossignol of Le Caveau along with me today to talk about Loire wines. Hands up, who loves the Loire? Hey, it's already okay. So you're in for a treat. We have a number of wines to taste. I think Mary's going to be pouring them while I'm talking. So, we want Loire. I want Loire. I absolutely adore the Loire region because it is so varied. It has such a variety of grapes, it has such a variety of styles, it has such a variety of sort of climate variation. So if you think of where is the Loire in France, the Loire Valley runs from west to east, so from the Atlantic near Nantes, inland up towards inland in towards north of Burgundy. And it's like, if you look at it, it's like an old man, a belt on an old man's trousers that's tied a little bit too high. That's the kind of description of the Loire River. And what it does, because it goes over such an extent, it has a massive variation in climate. So on the Atlantic coast, where Muscadet comes from, Muscadet, that variety or that wine that got such a bad rap for so many years. Who likes Muscadet? Right, we've got a challenge here today. We're going to make you love Muscadet. We're going to make Muscadet sexy again. So Muscadet is an incredible variety, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But just to go back a little bit to the different styles that we have in the Loire. So you've got Melon de Bourgogne, which is the Muscadet, the grape that's used to make Muscadet. Then as you go inland, you're getting to the region, sort of the middle Loire region, where they have Chenin Blanc, Cabernet Franc, Sauvignon Blanc. Then as you go further inland, you're getting to the sort of the upper Loire, they call it. So you're getting to Sancerre and Pouilly Fumé. Who loves Sancerre? From Pouilly Fumé. Okay. So Sancerre is probably the most popular region for Loire wines. But for me, there's more to the Loire than just Sancerre. And I'm here to show you today a Pouilly Fumé with a difference. So Pouilly Fumé is very similar in style to Loire, to Sancerre normally, but we've got a fantastic we've got a fantastic wine from Pouilly Fumé, and I'm here to really blow your minds with this incredible wine. So I think we start pouring, and so what we're pouring at the moment is the Muscadet. It's a Muscadet from the Nantes region on the Atlantic coast. So here it's made with the grape variety Melon de Bourgogne. which you would think is from Burgundy. Pascal is from Burgundy. And basically that part of the Loire Valley gets a lot of really, really harsh winters, and they get a lot of late frosts. So you got a lot of spring frosts. So they need a hardy grape variety that's going to stand up to those spring frosts. And they found that the Melon du Bourgogne was perfect in this region. So that's why you have Melon du Bourgogne growing there. The problem is it was for many years grown on massive scale, so very diluted. So what they discovered way back sort of in the 17th century, 18th century, was that they used to keep, when the winemakers used to make a barrel, make wine, they used to keep a barrel that they called the honeymoon barrel for when their son or daughter got married. And they discovered that by keeping it on its yeast, the dead yeast cells, so when the yeast dies off, they leave that in the barrel, and they discovered that leaving it on the dead yeast cells gave the wine an incredible complexity. So way more complex than if you just make the wine, filter it off the dead yeast cells, and bottle it. So you've heard of Muscadet de Sevre, Maine, sur-lit, yeah? So sur-lit is on those dead yeast cells. Pascal, do you want to say a little bit about the wine?
Yeah, indeed. So this particular estate is Chateau de Coing Saint-Fiacre. They're based in Saint-Fiacre-sur-Maine, the river, which is very close to the Loire River. It's pretty much it's an estate that works very artisanally in a way, and it's what we call a textbook Muscadet. As Beverly mentioned, and the reason why Muscadet got some stick over the last 20, 30 years, they were really victim of their own success. Roll back 40 years ago, even 30 years ago, the Parisian wine bars and bistro couldn't get enough Muscadet. So the demand was huge, and then it became popular around the world as well. So that put huge pressure on the demand. So growers, seeing that demand, they started to higher the yields and produce wine, in bigger quantity, expecting more from their vineyards. And eventually they reached a point where the wine were so diluted, they were so busy producing wine that they didn't look too much about quality, and that's what happened to a region, is that you reach your peak, and if you don't maintain the quality, then of course people start to turn away from the wine, and that's what happened to Muscadet in general. Of course, there are always in every region some really quality-focused producers, and certainly Véronique Gauthier-Chéreau is one of them there. But what you have here is a real. It is almost what makes Muscadet popular in the first place. It's you have a wine there that spent 10 months on the lees, so it's a Muscadet sur lit. For the appellation, you need that minimum time on the lees. So you gain richness and you gain complexity, because otherwise, as Beverly mentioned, Melon de Bourgogne is a pretty much kind of a, I won't say bland, but it has an extraordinary amount of flavors or structure. But by leaving it on the lees, you extract a little bit more from this wine, So they're doing that, and they limit the yields to something like 37 to 40 hectoliter per hectare, so that's way down of what they're allowed to do. And as I mentioned, every artisan that works, with respect of the land and the grapes will produce Muscadet like that. And you can just imagine if you had a plate of mussels or an oyster or any kind of a seafood salad with crab, anything to do with the sea, the Muscadet will be just brilliant with it, and some type of cheese as well. It's a kind of a good all-rounder as it comes to matching wine. So that's what we can say about that one.
Yeah. So the typical match in Muscadet or in the Nantes region is Muscadet served with a bowl of mussels or with oysters. And what it does, because it's got a gorgeous level of acidity, it's a really good wine for. It's like squeezing lemon over the mussels. That's exactly what it does. So imagine now you're on a sunny terrace in somewhere in the Nantes region, and you're sipping this wine and having some mussels, just perfect. You there? Are you with me? Yeah? Okay. So that's Muscadet. How did you find it? Yeah? So we all liking Muscadet a bit more now? Good. So the next wine that we're pouring is probably one of the reasons why I got into wine in the first place. And it's also one of the reasons why I got into more natural style wines. So this wine is by it's a Chenin Blanc. So as you move from the Nantes, so from the Atlantic, and you're moving inland, you get to the Middle Loire, where Cabernet Franc and Chenin Blanc are king, like they're king and queen, if you like. And they're two of my favourite grape varieties. When people ask me, it's hard when you're a wine lover and people ask that question, what's your favourite wine? And I always struggle because it depends on the day, it depends what I'm eating, it depends on so on. But I always come back to Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc for me is just, it's such an amazing grape because it has an incredible acid profile, so it goes really, really well with food. It has an ageability, so you can drink it very young, but it can age for many, many years. And it comes in a variety of different styles. So you can get a bone dry Chenin Blanc, or you can get something very, very sweet. You can get dessert wines made from Chenin Blanc. And particularly in this region in the Loire Valley, they also, like in Bordeaux, they get they have where they make the dessert wines from Semillon grape, where they have noble rot that affects the grapes. So you can get Chenin in many, many different styles. And for me, it's my favourite. If I'm out, if somebody asks me, what would you like to drink? It would be a glass of Chenin Blanc. And the producer here are one of the first. So and the Loire Valley is incredible for this sort of natural wine movement, but not only natural wine. It's really people who care about the land, working the land in such a way to protect it for the future. So you have the likes of Didier Dagenot in Pouilly Fumé, who was trying to reduce yields and really push things towards more organic viticulture. You have Nicolas Joly, who doesn't call himself a winemaker. He believes he's more a guardian of the landscape. He's one of the key supporters of biodynamic viticulture. And then you have a whole slew of natural winemakers who are doing incredible things and really going back to their roots and making wines the way wines would have been made many, many years ago before industrialization. And this particular wine comes from two of those sort of founding members of natural wine in the Loire Valley, Pierre and Catherine Bréton. So Pascal, you might say something about.
Sure, yes. So this vineyard is in the town of Vouvray. I think Vouvray is quite known in Ireland. You know, we have quite a few examples of Vouvray. So Pierre and Catherine Bréton started to make wine. Their first vintage was something like 34 years ago. And from the outset, they decided to run their vineyard. They turned it to organic viticulture, and then they reckoned that they wasn't going far enough because it's fine to bring some organic grape to the winery. If you start adding things or selecting yeast to start fermentation that are not from the land, they felt that it wasn't going to be true enough to the land. You know, so they started to use native yeast, all those ancestral techniques to make wine. So they turned very swiftly to natural winemaker at a time where there was no such thing. We didn't know the notion of natural wine. So they worked very so close to the land, as Beverly said. You know, they tend the land with care. Everything is made to have the healthiest possible grapes. So, and when this grape arrive in the winery, they're able to turn the wine just without adding anything into the wine. Hence, you know, we call them natural wine. No additives whatsoever. In this case, they had a tiny amount of sulfur just to stabilize the wine ever so slightly. We'll be talking about homeopathic doses of sulfur there. In a sense, it's a 2015 actually, you know, so it's already 4 years old, white wine, 4 years of age. 2015 was a very hot and sunny year, and you can see there that there's a lovely kind of a richness, almost sweetness. It's not exactly a sweetness, but there's a lovely softness in mid-palate. And then you have the dryness hitting you and cleansing the palate, making it ready for the next sip. That's the perfect balance for me for any single wine. And of course, any sweetness in there, any acidity in there, only comes from the grapes and nothing else. And then the 2015, if you try the 2016, which was a little bit colder, you would have a wine which would be slightly more focused, a bit more dense, less sweetness or softness. And that's okay too, because you open it year in, year out, and never tastes the same. There's variance in the climate. That's what you expect a wine to be. A wine to reflect the year that it's grown in, and a wine that reflects the piece of land that it was grown in. And that's what those wines, and this one in particular, is doing there. Chenin Blanc from Pierre and Fiacre.
So do we like Chenin Blanc? Yeah? Is it a yay for the Chenin? Anybody not? Too sweet? Okay. But we'll find something else. So we're now moving over to Pouilly Fumé. And so Pouilly Fumé is really home to Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir, but predominantly, only Sauvignon, but Sancerre has both Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Noir. But we're in the Pouilly Fumé region. Pouilly Fumé is renowned for the smoky notes that come from the terroir, from the soil that you get in the wine. This particular wine that we're pouring, I didn't like Sauvignon Blanc until I tasted this wine. For me, Sauvignon Blanc was very one-dimensional, very grassy, very overpowering when it came to food, and I just couldn't be bothered with it. I found it was just for me boring. Now I know a lot of people love Sauvignon Blanc, but for me it didn't really do anything for me until I discovered Alexandre Bain. And Alexandre Bain is a man that says he makes wines from late harvest grapes, what people would call late harvest grapes. So he leaves them on the vine for as late as possible until he feels they're absolutely ripe, and then he harvests them and he crushes them, makes the wine out of them. But he doesn't like to say it's late harvest. He says, I harvest my grapes when they're ripe. So everybody else in theory is harvesting early. But when you harvest later, you get obviously there's a higher sugar content to the grapes, but you also get a sort of a richness. There's much more complex flavor profile that you get from the grapes. And so this is a Sauvignon Blanc like you've never tasted before. So I apologize to anybody who thought they were going to get a Sancerre or a Sauvignon from Turin, but I thought this is the opportunity to show you what the Loire is doing. It's very, very exciting, and you have these really, really exciting winemakers who are doing things that are very different, but in actual fact, this isn't doing things differently. This is going back to the way wines would have been made years ago. So I think, has everybody got a glass of the so it's Alexandre Bain, Mademoiselle M. And Pascal, you might talk a little bit about Alexandre.
Alexandre in Pouilly Fumé arrived and revolutionized a bit the way the wines of Pouilly Fumé are made nowadays. You know, there's a way of making wines that has been adopted 40, 50 years ago of making Pouilly Fumé. But Alexandre, so he's 11 hectares, so it's a tiny property in Tracy-sur-Loire. He turned straight away his vineyard to biodynamic, and you will see him, he actually uses horses as well, because when you turn your vineyard to biodynamic, it's to recreate life in the soil mainly. So the last thing you want is to compact your soil again, because you've recreated, you air the soil so that bacteria and living forms can live in the soil and make it richer, and almost pre-digest the food so that the plant can actually feed on those soil. That's mainly what, and so many other things that what biodynamic makes. So using a horse is not just for a postcard, it's not a PR stunt, it's really because you can't bring heavy machinery if you're going to do this. If you're going to turn your vineyard, it helps, to use a horse to plow or to different jobs there. So Alexandre Bain is tending his 11 hectares, and as Beverly says, he can actually harvest a little later than his colleagues, because he has the perfect slopes, the perfect soil that would drain rapidly. If you leave your vine a few weeks more into September, you take the risk of having rain, and if that happened, it's not too bad for him, because, as I say, his vineyards are well drained and lots of wind as well, well exposed to the wind. So he feels privileged, and he can do that kind of viticulture. When the wines arrive and are hand harvested, they arrive in the winery. It's all about care and gentleness. It's a light, gentle pressing, the fermentation starts spontaneously, and that's probably the main difference why this Sauvignon taste and smell of his plot of land as opposed to tasting like a modern Sauvignon Blanc. Yeast selection is what really gives most than 50 or 60% of the flavor profile of the wine. So Sauvignon Blanc around the world are used, especially the more conventional and more, I would say, producing in greater number. They are made using those selected yeast to start the fermentation, and that gives those flavors that we all know of Sauvignon Blanc. If you plant a Sauvignon Blanc in Pouilly Fumé, it won't taste necessarily or smell the same as if you plant it 20 kilometers away. If you plant it in Chile, it has no reason whatsoever. You will get the trend, you will get the nettle as you get in this one, the white fruit for sure. That's a common denominator of Sauvignon Blanc. But Caspi, as we say, or wild gooseberry, or the flower buds that you get into the grassiness that you get in Sauvignon Blanc, it's not part of the grape. It's mostly the yeast that is used to start. But that's very important to know. Alexandre is making those really incredible, unique wines, and of course, natural wine getting momentum. More and more young growers, and that's the great thing about natural wine is that a lot of new growers wanting to take over from their parents are saying, yes, I'm going to take over the estate, but I want to make wine like this. I don't want to make conventional wine. I don't want to follow the recipe. I want to, they want to turn their vineyard to organic or biodynamic. They want to be able to let the children run free in the vineyard and no risk of any kind of chemical being sprayed. And of course, when we talk about biodynamic and organic, you can imagine the wildflowers and we call them weeds, but they are really old flowers or different type of plants that are growing freely. And those plants bring the balance, the nitrate, the nitrogen, everything that the plant needs in the soil. So there's no addition of any fertilizer. And the vineyard is a really beautiful place to walk when it's made organically. You imagine all those insects, those butterflies brought back to the vineyards, and it's just beautiful. And that's the new generation of winemaker we meet day in, day out when we tour the different countries around the world and Europe. They want to work in that way, and I think that's very encouraging for the future of wine.
Okay, so did you all like the Sauvignon Blanc? Yeah? Some people didn't like it? But maybe a little bit too sweet because you didn't like the Chenin previous? Yeah? But not your typical Sauvignon style. I just think it's just a real eye opener. It just shows that a grape doesn't have to be a particular way. Yes, it has its characteristics and so on, but you can allow the land to express itself through the grape as well. And I think Alexandre is doing an incredible job. He certainly got me onto Sauvignon Blanc, so I thank him for that. So now we're moving back into the Middle Loire. You should all have a red wine. So we're going to the Saumur-Champigny region, where Cabernet Franc is grown, and Cabernet Franc is one of those grape varieties that is grown in Bordeaux as part of a blending variety. So it's used to add a little bit of finesse or a little bit of maybe a little bit more structure to a Merlot, but it's not really used as a standalone in Bordeaux. I mean, there are certain houses in Bordeaux that will use Cabernet Franc as a single varietal, but mainly it's Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. But really, where Cabernet Franc is at its best is in the Loire. So you have regions like Chinon and Bourgogne and Saumur-Champigny, where you have a grape variety that, when it's grown correctly, gives you that nice sort of green note that you can get with Cabernet Sauvignon and also with Cabernet Franc, but also delicious red fruit with a little bit of sort of blackcurrant leaf. I just find it's a really elegant wine, goes really, really well with food, but you have to be careful because very often you find there's a lot of bell pepper or a lot of sort of very, very green notes come through when it's not made with care. But what we've poured you today is from a winemaker called Thierry Germain. He's in his vineyard is Domaine de la Roche Neuves, and he's in the Saumur-Champigny area, and he is He's an iconic winemaker, really. I mean, he's doing an incredible amount for the Loire Valley.
Indeed, yeah. No, Thierry is one of a kind. He's the most one of the most amazing in a way of precision and care for details of a winemaker we'll ever get to meet. His wines are incredibly successful. He makes wine naturally. He never really shouted too much about it, but he makes wine using absolutely no additives at all from biodynamically tended vineyards. In 2011, actually, and it was almost a breakthrough in France because Revue des Vins de France, maybe the most sold wine magazine in France by far, but also a very conservative magazine, you know, that tends to kind of like things the way they are and they don't look too much at changes. They actually gave Thierry Germain Wine Grower of the Year in France, and that was the first time ever that a natural winemaker was getting that title, so there was kind of a breakthrough there. So Thierry Germain has about 25 hectares in the area of Pouilly, in Saumur-Champigny region. And this particular vineyard is called Franc de Pied. So Franc de Pied basically means that it's planted on non-grafted Cabernet Franc. So a quick reminder of what happened back in between 1850 to 1900. All the vineyards of Europe were wiped out. I'm talking about every 98% of the vineyards of Europe were wiped out by a louse called Phylloxera. Insect that actually attacked the roots of, and they found no one to protect the vineyard. They found nothing. No treatment was able to kill because it lived in the ground and attacked the roots. And it propagated all over Europe, except maybe in sandy soil and volcanic soil. Except for that, it just destroyed all the vineyard. So vineyard had to be replanted. And after a few years of studies, people realized around Europe that in the US, the Phylloxera existed, but was not actually attacking the vines over there. So ever since, when they replanted vineyard in Europe, every single grape was grafted on American rootstock and then replanted. So maybe again in today's Europe, 95% of the vines are rooted on American rootstock. Some growers feel that maybe it's time to go back to the old way and trying again. No, Phylloxera is still alive and present around Europe, but some sites when they're a bit more sandy, Phylloxera doesn't like sandy soil, doesn't really fare well in there. So Thierry Germain decided to plant 1.5 hectare of a vineyard of Cabernet Franc on original rootstock. So no grafting there, no grafting should I say, and that's this one is the vines are about 30 years, 35 years old, and the experience is working very well, you know. So, like as Cabernet Franc goes, that's a really good example. And as we said, you know, it's clean, it's focused, has a lovely fleshiness, and yet it's dry, and it's in perfect balance. And again, that's a 2015. So you can see some 4 years of age wine that the Dilettante, Vouvray was 15. So was the Alexandre Bain, and this one as well. So you see, 4 years after, you can see how natural wine can evolve as well. They evolve so nicely and almost effortlessly. This one will go on and on and on for another 15 years effortlessly, you know. It will develop more kind of complex aromas, more animal flavor, gamey flavor, we call them. But right now it's just singing really, I think.
So, cheers to the Loire. Do we all love the Loire now? Yes? Fantastic. So go out and support the Loire wine growers and drink loads of Loire. We want Loire. Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beverly. It was great meeting you and getting a taste of the Latitude 51 experience. I'm really looking forward to coming down and seeing you guys over in Cork. For more details of Latitude 51, do check out their website and main social media handles below. And while you're at it, please follow along with me. I'm at Interpreting Wine on Instagram and Facebook, at Wine Podcast on Twitter, and email hello@interpretingwine.com. Next time, episode 297 sees the return of Claire Gallagher in her talk all about unusual grape varieties. See you then.